I am Connie Mitchell. I'm a member of practically all these organizations on this sheet. And I'm so happy to say welcome to each and every one of you on this very, very cold, slippery day. It's wonderful that you have taken the time to come out to hear these very important messages that we will hear this evening. This is an outgrowth of the League of Women Voters doing what I consider the right thing, trying to make sure that people advocate, understand, and act on things that are important to us as Americans. It is also important that we build community, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but I'm going to stop now because I would like to introduce one of our co-presidents of the League of Women Voters, Dearborn Heights, and now Inkster. Yes. So give that a hand. And we are planning to expand our reach even farther than Inkster. So we'll talk more about it later on. But at this moment, I would like to ask Jen Oliver, Mrs. Jen Oliver, to come up and bring greetings.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And thank you on behalf of my co-president, Alicia Mazurek, who isn't able to join us tonight, our board, our membership. Thank you all for joining us tonight. This is an important topic, and we especially need to band together now and build community. So thank you, Karen, our advocacy chair, and Connie, and everybody on the advocacy committee. Oh, thanks, Carolyn. Carolyn always reminds me that I need to speak right into the mic. So thank you to our advocacy committee and our partner organizations. I think this is a really good event, and we hope that you'll join us in the future. So sign up on our sign-in sheet in the back, and we'll get you on our mailing list, and you can stay informed about all of our events. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I would like to ask Gina Wilson Stewart, who is the president of the Western Wayne County NAACP, to come forward and bring greetings.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to be here to hear from our guests. As they said, we're glad that you guys came out, but there's one thing that I need to say. Happy Black History Month. Yeah. So, even though at the Telegram and with the NAACP, we celebrate Black History every day, but since everybody else use these 28 days, I just wanted to make sure that we do not forget to say Happy Black History Month to everybody that I see. You know how you say Merry Christmas? I say Happy Black History Month. So anyway, thanks for coming out, and let's share the information that we get today.
Thank you. On your program, you see building bridges and strengthening communities. And I wrote a little something. I usually speak extemporaneously, but I'm going to kind of read today. At each of the meetings of the national, state, and local League of Women Voters units, chapters, groups, we often say what is called a land acknowledgement to open our meetings. It is no secret that America was colonized, and the original inhabitants of this land were indigenous people. And in our area of the state, we acknowledge the I've been practicing that word all day. Thank you, people. Known as the Three Fires Confederacy, which includes the Ojibwa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi, and then the Wyandot people. But it is also suggested in an LWV guide that I used and read that every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who have contributed to these hopes, dreams, and energy to making history that has led us to this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life. Some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connections across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. Let me repeat that. We begin this effort by making sure that we dig up the history that has been buried in this country. We are indeed standing on the stolen ancestral land of the Anishinaabe people. We are also indeed standing on the land that our African ancestors' blood, sweat, tears, anguish, skills, genius, and compassion rose above the degradation they suffered to make America's good exist. And we as a people also continue to dare to dream and hope that the fruition of equality and justice for all comes to be in America. So this evening, the League of Women Voters of Dearborn Heights, Inkster, and proudly the Western Wayne County branch of the NAACP, the Inkster Citizens Action Network, the Inkster Task Force, and the City of Inkster have come together for this evening's program. It's a way to open the door to unity among us, to understand that we have common goals, we have common desires, and we have common work to do as groups coming together, unified as one. At the end of my email, I have a quote that always goes out. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So hopefully this evening is our opening of the door to let us be able to go together to do the things that we know will benefit all Americans. Thank you. Laura, you sure you don't want to come up here and do this little thing?
Well, it'd be an
Laura,
honor.
Laura's like me. She makes stuff up and then she leaves it at home on the kitchen table. Come on, Laura.
I did, but I looked it up and I felt really, impressed with what they've done in their lives, but I think you're
And you're gonna let me
prepared.
do it anyway,
Yeah.
okay.
You're
I'm going to take the moments now to introduce our guest speakers. First, we have a person that has some renown in our area. Everybody knows him, really. His name is Isaiah, but most people call him Ike.
The good people call me
The
that.
good people call him Ike. Let's clarify that. Every time I talk to him, and I know he's Dr. Isaiah McKinnon, I always had to be respectful, and I'm like, you can't call that man Ike, you don't know nothing about him. So, let me just tell you a few things about Dr. Ike McKinnon. You want me to tell him what you were born in? He was born June 21st.
Montgomery, Alabama.
All right, see? You know he's a former police officer employed by the Detroit Police Department from 65 to 64.
84.
And 84. And he was the chief from 93 to 98. She's helping me do this. She said she had studied it.
Backseat driver.
Right. He was one of the first African-American officers in the Detroit Police Force, was the deputy mayor of Detroit from 2013 to 2016, and was also a professor at University of Detroit Mercy. In 1967, while an officer in the Detroit Police Department, I'm gonna let him tell you that first story. I'll leave you guessing. He was born in Montgomery, Alabama, as Laura shared. His father, Kota, was a carpenter, like my dad, and his mother was a housewife. In 1957, he was 14 years old, and something happened that altered the pattern, the road that he would walk. and he'll tell you about that. He served in the United States Air Force from 1961 to 1965. Thank you for your service, sir. He attended basic training in Texas, spent 3 years at the Knott Air Force Base in North Dakota. So this cold is nothing to you. He then served overseas in the Philippines and Vietnam during his last year in the military. He holds a doctorate in higher education administration from Michigan State University, a master's in criminal justice from Mercy College of Detroit, and a bachelor's in history and law enforcement from the University of Detroit. He joined the police department, as I told you, in 1965, where he worked until 1984, and later became the chief of police. He was also known as the poster officer for recruiting more minorities into the police, with his picture being used on police recruiting posters. I didn't know that. So he was a poster boy, as they say. He also led some very important initiatives, one of which was teaching officers basic Spanish so they could better cooperate with people of Spanish-speaking tongues. And he did groundwork for the gun buyback program. I'm going to stop because it's more here, but we need to move on. But that just lets you know what kind of man he has been in our midst and the things that he has done, and he's going to share some very interesting facts with us this evening. Next is Sheriff Raphael Washington. He is our Wayne County Sheriff, and he views his recent elevation to Sheriff of Wayne County as an answer to fervent prayer in nearly 4 decades of dedicating himself to law enforcement excellence. As the head of the large agency, which we know Wayne County is a large agency, he is in charge of 3 jail facilities, none of which I hope none of us have been in. Road patrol, a Marine unit. Have you ever seen a Marine unit on the river? A mounted unit, and supplements law enforcement activities in collaboration with 43 cities. And in all of our cities, we can often see Wayne County sheriffs riding through, which makes us feel more comfortable. He is a proud graduate of the public school system and wholly encourages everyone to pursue higher learning and continuing education. He's a graduate of Cleary University, earning a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice Management. He is also a graduate of Eastern Michigan University School of Police Staff and Command, and he graduated from the National FBI Academy, Session 248. Sheriff Washington has also earned an executive certificate at Harvard University, their John F. Kennedy School in State and Local Government. So we have 2 very distinguished gentlemen with us this evening. Give them both a hand. You can both come up. You're welcome.
So, should we stand or sit, or does it matter?
Make yourself comfortable.
Make myself comfortable, I'm gonna lay down.
Say, why stand when you can sit, why sit when you can lay down?
Well, see, part of my problem is I'm much older than Ray, so he might have to hold me up here. I'll do that. So, if you could, I better stand.
You sure?
Well,
Are you more
Sitting is
comfortable?
fine.
sitting is fine if you can. Oh, okay, give me a pop or something more.
No, that's your water. Do you need something?
No, I'm good, thank you so much.
Okay, and your mics are here, just.
We're good. Well, here comes a crowd coming in.
Yes.
This is good.
We thought it started at 6:30.
Thank you for being here.
Welcome, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words of introduction. You know, Ray and I have known each other for a long time, and I'm the old, you have the young pup and the old dog. I'm the old dog. I was just mentioning, I will celebrate my 82nd in June. Oh, yeah. That's right. If you remember Benny Napoleon, he was good friends of both of us, and Benny was the godfather of my youngest son. Yeah. But let's say this now. I really like the fact that we're talking about these subjects that traditionally people don't necessarily talk about. You mentioned in 1957, I was 14 years old, and that's one of the most significant things that changed my life. It absolutely turned my life around. As a young boy growing up on the east side of Detroit, well, as you mentioned, I was born in Alabama, but when I was 9 years old, my family moved to Detroit. It was part of that group that came to get a job, and my dad worked in the automobile factory for years after he got here. And I think it was really something because he was making $40 a week, and that was a lot of money back in the 50s. Anyway, I remember living, number one, in Brewster Projects, and then from there we moved down the street to 4125 St. Antoine. But as a young boy, you walked around and you saw these things, and what stood out for me is the fact that I never, very seldom, saw a police officer of color. And when I did see police officers, what they would do is there's a group of young boys that would hang out on the corner of Superior and St. Antoine, and these guys would jump out of the car. There's four white officers jump out of the car. And the things that they would do to these young men, I would say, my God, I'm a young boy. I would say, this is not right. This is not the right thing to do. And those young men, I mean, just standing on the corner singing, and just being young men, but they weren't doing anything bad. And I was like, man, this is just crazy. But so, in 1957, can you hear me? Okay. In 1957, September, my first day of school at Cass Tech, I went back to my junior high school, which is Garfield Junior High, to say hi to my favorite teacher of all time, Mr. Raymond Hughes, who was turning 100 next month. We're having a big party for him. We're still friends. Anyway, I went to see him and thanked him and Mr. Teasley, who was my other teacher. And as I left the school, I was walking across the street, and this car, the Big Four, these four large officers, they grabbed me and threw me up against the car. Now, I had not done anything, absolutely done nothing other than the fact that I'd gone to school. And so as they did that, they started swearing at me and saying things like, what the blank are you doing here? And I said, well, sir, I'm here to see my teacher. And as I did that, they started hitting me. So I'm 14 years old, and they're hitting me between my neck and my waist, and they're beating me up. And I mean, I'm crying because I'm 14 years old, and this never happened to me. But I'd seen them do this to other young men. And I kept saying, but sir, the more I said that, the more they beat me. And I was looking back, and the crowd of people behind them were saying, stop, 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 but they kept beating me up. And at some point, they swore at me and told me to get my blank out of there. And I took off running, and I ran home. But I didn't tell my parents, because back in those days, if your parents went to the police and made a complaint, they got locked up, or they got beat up. And especially my mother, who was a tough lady, Anyway, so I ran home, and I didn't tell my parents. But I made a decision that evening I was going to become a Detroit police officer.
Wow.
And people say, why did you do that? I said, well, because I wanted to make sure that those kinds of things did not happen to anyone. And I kept that promise. I said I'm going to finish school because I knew I couldn't afford to go to college. And so when I turned 17, I joined the Air Force. I was in the Air Force for 4 years, 3 years, 11 months, and 1 day. But I maintained that promise that I was going to become a police officer. And never knowing the things that I would see or come across. But while I was in the Air Force, I went to Vietnam, almost lost my life there a number of times, being shot at, being stabbed, and jumping out of helicopters and things like that. said, am I gonna make it back to Detroit to live up to my promise? But I did. And the more you make yourself that promise, the more you say, this is what I have to do. Anyway, so that 366 days that I spent in Vietnam was another lesson for me because I wanted to get back to Detroit and live up to that promise. And so I remember specifically as I was in the jungle in Vietnam and they had a helicopter come to pick us up and they lowered the cable because they could not land in the jungle. And I remember they lowered the cable and they were pulling me up and these guys are shooting at us. And I can see the guys, the Viet Cong, with their black garb on, they're shooting at us. And the guy in the helicopter with the machine gun, he's shooting down at them. And I'm going, but don't miss. Don't miss. You have to laugh at this because this is truth, you know. And so he's swinging. I'm on this cable, he's swinging. I was telling my wife the other day, I said, this is what I was doing. I was swinging as they were shooting at me. So they're shooting, he's shooting down, they're shooting up, and everybody's missing. You know, and I'm saying, thank God you're missing. Thank God, you know. So they got me into the helicopter, and I said, man, Lord, if you let me get out of this one, you don't have to worry about me getting in a helicopter, going to the jungle or anything like that. Well, of course, you don't make that decision. You know, so somebody else takes like. Anyway, so I got back to Detroit, and I joined the Detroit Police Department. And I was so happy with the fact that here I was, this young man, the first in my family, number one, to go into the military. Second, number two, the first in my family to become a police officer. And if we look at this in terms of a retrospective on color in policing, the things that we saw, you wouldn't believe. I mean, the name calling and stuff like that. So what I went through at 14 was still happening at my age of 22 now. I was seeing those kinds of things happen with people, and I would say to these officers, now understand this was not just white officers, this was black officers too, that was doing this stuff. The race will tell you the same thing, you know, that what we saw, you wouldn't believe. However, somebody had to stand up and say enough is enough. And that's what we had to do to make sure that whether it's a young kid at the time that was me, or an older person, you had to make sure that you didn't want these kinds of things to happen in front of you and say that, look, who knows what's going to happen to somebody else? This is somebody's brother, this is somebody's sister, somebody's father, mother. This is a reality. And I made sure that I maintained that goal in life to make sure that those kinds of things didn't happen. So it's ironic that my very first day as a Detroit police officer, I was in the station and I was the only person of color on duty at that time. You think, well, this is 1965. And at the time, there was 5,500 police officers in Detroit and probably 50 of color. Oh yeah. And so the things that you heard, you said, no, this can't be happening now because we're all police officers. You can't be, we're all, at that time it was all men. Those things you just don't see and do those things. Anyway, the very first night, the sergeant, two sergeants and a lieutenant came up for roll call. If you've ever seen a police roll call, they would call names for the assignment of the car that you were in. And they, to the first two guys, the two white guys, they, here sir. Second two guys, the third, that was me and white officer. And they said, this guy's officer's name, which I almost called it, but I won't. They said his name, and then they said McKinnon, Scout 27. And I said, here, sir. And at that point, this officer said some of the most vile, profane, and racist things you ever want to hear. Wow. That I'm the only black person at roll call. And I relived 1957 of what had happened to me, the name calling that these officers had done. And everybody started laughing at roll call. And I'm saying, my God, you know, come on, God, you got me through Vietnam. You know, I was in a plane crash, I was shot at and all that stuff. Now I'm here, I was beaten up at 14, and now this is happening right now in a police station. This is not supposed to be happening because as the code that we live by, as a law enforcement officer, my fundamental duty is to serve the community, to safeguard lives and property, protect the innocent against deception, weak against oppression or intimidation, and respect the constitutional rights of all to liberty, equality, and justice. Well, this wasn't happening. I'd seen it back in '57. I'd seen it before. Now it's happening to me again at roll call. And so everybody's laughing but me. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And if it happened to you, you would say, God, why me, Lord? And honestly, I would say that. Why me, Lord? We'll get to that a little later, but this is the reality of what was going on. So I walked out to, after roll call, to where the cars were parked on the ramp, they called it. And there's this officer who had made this terrible racist comment. I said, excuse me, am I working with you? And he said nothing. I said, excuse me, am I working with you? And the way I'm talking with you is the way I spoke to him. I was smiling. And he never said a word. So I walked back to the sergeant and I said, Sarge, who am I working with? Am I working with? He said, that's your partner right there. And so I went and sat in the car with this person. And for 8 hours we rode and he never said a word to me.
Wow.
That's a reality. But now, let me clear this up. They also did it to young white officers too. I mean, these guys, they did not want to have black people, they didn't want to have poor people working as law enforcement officers. And they would try and dissuade you from staying on the job, to leave. And that's the reality. And it went on for years and years and years. I never thought that I would get the rank that I certainly never thought I'd become chief. Never thought I'd become chief. I never thought that I would live to see the things that I did, but I did. But each and every time that something like that happened, it became more of a deed for me to make sure that I didn't let those things continue to happen to other people. And so when you had people, Hispanic people, who joined the police department, the same thing happened to them. Women, it was even worse at the things that they did, you know. But these are people who did not want you to join. I remember this very good friend of mine, he happened to be white, a white officer, and this is my first week on the job. He said to me, he said, Ike, don't let these guys make you quit the job. He said, because they don't want black people, they don't want women, they don't want Hispanics, they don't want them on the job. They don't want you to be a police officer because they want to rule the things that are there. So this stays with you. Stays with you. And so, as I lived through that, I said, I've got to make not only my life better, I've got to make everybody else's life better. And the more I talked to people in the street, the more they said, thank you for what you're doing. And so, in 1967, after the rebellion/riot, I was on my way back home the first night, and I was driving my little black or green Mustang convertible, and I came up off the freeway at Chicago Boulevard. I lived in the heart of everything that was going on. And as I turned left on Chicago Boulevard and started west, the scout car with two white officers pulled me over. I was in uniform. I had two for the precinct. I had my badge, I had my hat on with my shield. And these officers, they pulled me over. And I said, police, you know, and I stood up, you know, and I got my gun here, uniform, and at this point, they said, get out of the car. I stepped out of the car, and at that point, they said, tonight you're gonna die. And then they said the N-word. And I said, police officer. I'm smiling, the same way I'm smiling with you now. They said, tonight you're gonna die. And they repeated themselves. And they both pulled their guns out. And it was like time stood still. And I could see this one officer as he cocked his gun. And I dove back into my car as they started shooting. Yeah. Thank God they were bad shots. You know? Really, they missed every time. And I dove, and I had my left hand on the steering wheel, and I was in the accelerator with my right hand, and I drove west, and they're shooting. And I said, God, why me? I mean, really, I said, God, come on, God, why me? You know? I mean, I've been through Vietnam, and I always say this. So I got home, and I called my sergeant. And I said, Sergeant, let me tell you what happened. He said, listen, there's some, and the term that he used was a very profane term. He said, there's some bad people out there. I said, you telling me they just shot at me, you know? So he said, but I do not let these guys make you quit this job. I said, they almost killed me, Sarge. He said, stay on. He said, was that one of those guys outside?
I think that was them.
Anyway, and so I said, I've got to do better. And so my goal then was to go to school. I started college in 1968, and I started studying. And Ray will tell you that the way we had to study to get promotions was just incredible. And so, as I became sergeant, became lieutenant, I'm studying, I was in college at the same time. I met my wonderful wife, who also was a person who said, Ike, you can't let this stuff hold you back. When we look at this in terms of a retrospective of color and policing, there's some bad things that happen. But my position is that I can't blame every person for these idiots that were doing these bad things. And so you'll hear people say that some of my best friends, well, some of my best friends are white police officers. Yeah, and that's a reality. I mean, because you had these bad people who shot at me, another guy stabbed me in my neck, another guy stabbed me in my, well, I'm lucky. I said to the guy, I said, guy, you did this for me to learn. I was stabbed in my stomach with a guy with a knife. And so I laugh back now because he took this knife and he rammed it into my stomach, and the knife broke. It hit my belt buckle. And when it hit my belt buckle, I said, "You in trouble." He said, I'm sorry. I said, I know you're sorry. I know you're sorry now because you tried to kill me. He said, I mean, listen, what? He said, please don't kill me. I said, I'm not going to kill you. He said, but you ain't going to beat me up. I said, no, I'm not going to beat you up. I said, now, these guys. Anyway, but no, these are true stories. This is a reality. And what we have to learn to do, which I learned to do, was control myself from those kinds of actions. So in 1968, after Dr. King was killed, I was on patrol, and there were 4 of us guys in a car. And there's a car at Richton and Dexter, a white Mustang. And when you rode in the car, every car that was stolen in the state, you had it on a hot sheet. So I looked, and I said to my partner, it's a stolen car. So the passenger jumped out of the car and started running. Well, back in those days, I was a fast runner. I almost made the Olympic team. That's how fast I was. You know? I really was. Anyway, so I knew I was going to catch him. So I'm chasing him down Richard Street, and I'm assuming that my partners are behind me. So I chase this man down the street, and he runs into this apartment building, and I'm catching up to him, as close to you. And he runs into the building, and he hits his door, and slams the door behind him. And I hit the door behind him and opened it. And I look in, and there's 3 guys, the 2 guys and him, 3 now, they had AK-47s. That's exactly what I said. I said, Lord, come on now. I mean, this is crazy. Why me, Lord, you know? Anyway, so back in those days, we carried a Smith & Wesson 38 weapon. So I pull my gun out, and I'm standing up there with my 38, and these guys got AK-47s. And I said, freeze! They said, are you out of your effing mind? So I said, you under arrest to this guy who ran, and And they said, no, let him go. I said, no, and I grabbed him. And it's like God says, listen, I'm gonna test you again, you know? And so I got him around the neck and I'm pulling him back. And so these guys are walking towards me with the AK-47s and I'm pulling him out the apartment door. Now I get to the porch and I'm there and they got the AK-47s trained on us. And so I'm going, God, Lord, come on, Lord, don't do this to me, please, you know? And so they're still saying, let him go. Anyway, so I get out on the porch now, and they have the AK-47s trained on us. So now I gotta get down the steps, and I'm waiting to be shot. And the most frightening part of this is, I see myself lying in a casket, and I see my mother crying, because her son was killed in the line of duty. This is really a true story. I saw myself lying in a casket as I'm walking down the steps. So I get out onto the street now. I still got the guy, and these guys with the AK-47s, they still have them trained, and they're still saying, let him go. And by that time, a group of people, neighborhood people, they surround us. And this one gentleman, he said, let him go. And the main bad guy, he said, that's right, let him go. And the gentleman who said, no. He said, let Officer Ike go. I said, that's right, let me go. This is really the truth. I said, that's right, let me go. And so the good gentleman, he said, that's right, let Officer Ike go, because he's a good guy. He's doing good things for us here in the community. He's protecting our community. You cannot harm him. Wow. And I'm going, my God. And at that point, the bad guys ran away with their AK-47s. And I'm standing holding this guy. Wow. Now, when this was all over, I said to the gentleman, I said, God, you saved my life. Why did you do that? He said, because we can't lose people like you. You're doing the right thing. He said, we heard about your story of why you became a police officer. Wow. He said, we heard about this. You were beaten up and so forth. He said, we need more people like you. I said, God, thank you. And they called my boss to say, look, let us tell you what we did. And it made a big difference. Now, I tell you this story because this is a reality of what we face. These things that we go through as law enforcement officers, we see good, we see bad. And you hear some of those things. But my part of this was to do as much as I could to make a difference within the respective community. I've traveled all over this country speaking about this. All over this country. The best one I had was in Hawaii. Number one, to go to Hawaii, but to speak to them about this. But as I do this even more so now, I love it more because of the message. And I hope that I can continue to do this forever and forever. But I made this decision with, whether it's schooling, there were no police people with PhDs, and right. as Ray did the FBI Academy, I'm one of those old people. I did, 200 what? 248. Well, see, I was the 110th session. Yes. That's me and J. Edgar Hoover. That's how long ago it was for me, But it was important to learn and to be an active part of this. And so when I became chief, I said, I've got to continue to do this as much as possible. Now, it was good for me, it was good for my family, but I also have to continue to let people know some of the bad things that happen. Because we, as law enforcement people, our fundamental duty is to serve the community. To serve the community. To safeguard lives and property. Protect the innocent against deception, the weak against oppression or intimidation, and respect the constitutional rights of all to liberty, equality, and justice. Now, there's so much more that one can say with all this. I've written books, on Good Morning America, the Today Show, all those things. I was on Oprah, talking about the same thing. I've written 3 books, and I'll continue to do this. But I want to continue to educate people to the reality of what people face. I'm not angry at anyone because of things that I went through. What I'm trying to do is educate people. Because if we can do this, we can make a difference in this world of ours. I do a lot of op-ed writing for the thing of the Free Press. But I do this because I think it's important. We have to make a difference. As law enforcement officers, we have to make this difference. So now, I want to stop, because I don't want to take up all the time, but the sheriff is going to talk, and then I guess we'll do questions. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, it's a pleasure for me to be here. And thank you all. Thank you, League of Women Voters and Ms. Connie Mitchell for allowing me to be here. Good to see Wilson Stewart, Western Wayne and LACP, and all of you all here, my chaplain, Chaplain Overt. Good to see you as well. Big pardon? Yes. So, I won't take up a lot of time. As I see, I'm supposed to speak about flashing lights, navigating police encounters, knowing your rights and responsibilities. I love to talk about that kind of encounter with police officers and the public, because I think it's very, very important. I was just hoping that there was quite a few younger people here today. Not that you all are older people.
No, we were hoping for younger people.
But so you just need to take the message back to them. I've been in law enforcement for 42 years now this year, and thank you all for thinking I don't look that old. But yes, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's a pleasure and an honor for me to be able to do this. I've done pretty much everything you can do in law enforcement with the Detroit Police Department, as well as the Wayne County Sheriff's Office. And so, as you can imagine, having been in law enforcement that long, I've encountered a lot of people, and I've seen things happen with encounters with police officers. 14 of my 25 years with the Detroit Police Department was with a unit that we called Traffic Enforcement Unit. I've done everything pretty much, from narcotics and gangs and patrol and everything. But I wanted to go to the Traffic Enforcement Unit because I wanted to really have close encounters with the public and talk to them about various things that we as the public should be doing, as well as officers, and how we should be conducting ourselves. And the other part of wanting to go to traffic enforcement was because I got to ride a Harley Davidson motorcycle while I was working, and that was huge for me. We got a lot of respect as one-man cars and one-man working motorcycles, and with our boots and breeches on, and our leather jackets and things like that. We got a lot of respect just from being in that kind of position. However, when we talk about encounters with police officers, when we talk about that, I'll talk about that from a traffic stop position, as well as just an overall encounter with police officers. I tell young people all the time, and I'm gonna let you all know as well, when we talk about being pulled over in traffic stops, oftentimes we want to know right away as drivers, what did I do? And young people, especially nowadays, they want to know what did I do? They want to challenge police officers when they're being stopped because they feel like maybe they're being profiled or maybe they're being disrespected. And it kind of goes left real quick if you're not of the right mindset as when you're being pulled over. That officers are on edge as well when they're pulling people over. You all need to know that officers are killed in line of duty more often by a simple routine traffic stop than raiding houses and drug houses and dealing with gangs and things like that. It's the routine traffic stop that we call routine. There's nothing routine about it, where officers are killed the most. And so officers are approaching situations, very kind of like on edge, as professional as we are, kind of on edge as well. So when they pull up to traffic stops often, and I've done it for years, and you start to do what you need to do. Hey, how you doing? Can I see your driver's license, registration, proof of insurance? And then it goes left sometimes when the driver starts to talk about, well, what did I do? You didn't tell me what I did. And so, you know, we should tell people what they did, the violation that they caused me or us to have to pull them over. But oftentimes, the officers want to get the ID and things first so they can at least have something in case this traffic stop goes bad. However, it goes like, well, officer, you didn't tell me what you did. You didn't tell me what I did. I don't have to tell you anything. Young people know their rights better than anybody, and they really don't. And so they will start to tell you things, and the traffic stop goes bad. And we've seen on TV a lot lately, or not as much lately, but in the past few years back, that we saw primarily off African American people or young men be killed in traffic stops.
Yes.
Because and unjustifiably. And I tell people, young people, you cannot challenge police officers during traffic stops. You have to, you must comply with whatever they're telling you to do. Because it's important to me, as I told, I have a 39 and 37-year-old son, and they were growing up, and I told them, you must obey what they're telling you, do exactly what they're telling you, and make sure that you can survive that encounter and make it home to me. If you felt like you were disrespected, if you were, they browbeat you and just, you know, called you all kind of names and did whatever they did because the encounter went that way, it's important for me that you make it home. That you make it home and not put yourselves in a position where it's going to be a confrontation and something could go wrong, because we've seen that to be a reality. If you can make it home and let me know or let your parents know exactly what's going on, what went on, and they can get you together and go to the police station and talk to the higher-ups and commanders and captains and things like that and let them know what happened, that's much better than taking a chance on not making it home because that encounter went bad. And we call wrong in law enforcement, we call right. And we've seen officers do the wrong things, set people up to be confrontational. Yeah. And then there's a shooting, and then there's someone dead on a simple traffic stop. Yeah. So you have to make sure that we pass the word around that when we have traffic stops or encounters with police officers, please simply comply, obey whatever they're asking you to do, and make it home, and let us deal with it as parents, and even some of you who are even middle-aged or even older, that you do the same thing. You can always go to the police station and let them know, the higher-ups let them know what happened, and they'll deal with that officer. So, and it's the same thing if you're dealing with police officers for whatever reasons. You know, everybody now, I'm also a CPL instructor, a concealed pistol license instructor. Those are people who want to carry guns concealed. It's your Second Amendment right, if that's what you want to do. That's what the law says you can do. However, I've made myself a point of becoming a certified instructor because I want to talk to people and teach them how and what they should be doing when you're encountering police officers and you have a gun, legally have a gun. How you must let any police officer, whether you're standing talking to a police officer, whether you're in a car and doing a traffic stop, if you're legally carrying a gun and you have it on you, concealed, you must let a police officer know that, officer, this is who I am, and I have a gun on me. I'm a concealed pistol license holder, and I have a gun. If you do that, it's going to make it easier on you and the police officer. Because if something happens and you have to end up finding that gun, we end up finding that gun later through whatever may be going on, and you didn't tell us, then it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem. It's your right to carry, but you also carrying, you must let police officers know that you're carrying a weapon. That's the law. And so those kind of things will get us through those encounters with police officers. And again, it's not always citizens' faults. You know, police officers have bad days. They have bad situations that go on constantly through the day. One moment during the day, you're dealing with talking to someone about the day. How's your day going? It's a very nice situation. The next day, the next minute, you're in a major shootout. And so things happen with police officers, and they're on edge sometimes. We're on edge. But I'm telling you, if you follow what I'm saying and you do it the right way, you make it through that encounter with a law enforcement officer. And that's all we want to do, regardless of how it happened and whether they pulled you over for no reason, because we always think we don't have a reason and to be pulled over. But just make it through that. I, as a African-American male, and I'm driving a car, sometimes my wife's car, or whatever, that's not identified as a police car, and I get pulled over for whatever reasons. I do speed a little bit every now and then, but don't tell nobody that. I try to follow speed laws, really. But nevertheless, I pulled over, and I, as the sheriff, or as I was coming up through the Detroit Police Department as a police officer and a sergeant, a lieutenant, inspector, all those ranks, I never talked about, I never did tell them who I was when I was pulled over. I wasn't about playing games with the police. Well, let me just see how far they're gonna go. Let me just see if they're gonna do the wrong thing. I never wanted to be that person to do that, because I know how fast things can go wrong. I tell them right quick, let the window down and say it out loud. Hey, I'm a police officer. You know, I have a gun, raise my hands. All of that, because we don't want to play games like that and risk our lives, because, again, you run into the wrong one and something goes left, and there we are. So I say all that again to just say simply, comply. Comply with traffic stops, encounters with police. If you're carrying a gun legally, please let them know. Please let us know. If you're pulled over and it's a traffic stop, please let the officer do his job, ask you the questions, answer the questions, and comply versus becoming confrontational and something going wrong. So there may be some questions to that, or some questions to what I talked about, which was very good stuff. That's how things were. When I got on the Detroit Police Department after being on the sheriff's office for a while, and then going back to the sheriff's office after 25 years, I ran into some of those things, like you would imagine. In 1985, I remember going out on the street for the first time as well, and one of the officers told me, he said, young officer, he was a white officer, and we became friends, but initially, he said, young officer, you see this shirt? And he's looking at it as his police shirt. He said, it doesn't have any holes in it, right? I said, no, I don't see any holes. He said, it better not have any holes in it when I get off work tonight. And we were partnering, meaning he was holding me responsible for if something happened to him and being shot in the line of duty, and it was going to be my fault, and I was going to have to deal with that. And that's the kind of, that was your welcome to the police department kind of message that you got. And even when I came on in 1985. So what he said was very, it's true, I can imagine, 25 years earlier than that, coming on the police department. So again, thank you for the time, and if there's questions that you might have, I think that's where we are. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if this is on.
Just look at it. Push it up. Push it up.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
That's all right. I think I talked loud enough. I was in college in the late 60s, and a lot of what happened around the time of the rebellion or the riot was there were police officers that were given essentially the stop and frisk ability. And that there, I can't remember what it was called in Detroit, but it was essentially stop and frisk. If they had any reason, they could stop you and they'd frisk you and create a conflict. And the Algiers Motel incident that happened related to the riots, or the other things that happened around that time were very much in the news and were concerns. As I know you weren't there then, but what were your concerns at that time, and were you able to articulate that then? And then later, when you became in a position of authority for both of you, what were the things that you were most affected by when you were a police officer before being leader, and what were the things that you did as a leader that you're most proud of? So I know that's a lot, but so.
I'm gonna give you a long answer. No, no. I was concerned because I saw what had happened to me on instances. These same officers who were acting a certain way towards me, would they do that on the street? And they did. And so the things that they did, and this is back in the 50s when I was a really young kid, I mean, this is normal, this is every day. And so if an officer acted that way to a person, to me, and they did that to somebody on the street, there's some anger that was there. What you don't know is back in the 50s, they could lock somebody up and hold them for 72 hours without telling anybody, without telling their parents. And my parents were so afraid because my brother was 3 years older, and that might happen to him. So if you were, it could be white, black, whatever it might be, they could hold you for 72 hours, and everybody was upset. And in fact, back in the late 50s, there was a blue flu because the NAACP and other groups had protested this. They said, you guys shouldn't be doing this. How can you hold somebody for 72 hours and not tell their parents, or whoever it might be? But this was normal. This was a normal thing that occurred. And so as it got into the 60s, and we had this disproportionate number of minorities on the police department, you know, what do people do? How can they stop those kinds of things from continuing to happen? And there was so much anger. I'm telling you, you just can't imagine the anger that was there during this time. And when I came on at 65, I mean, it was there. But thank God for me, I'd been away for 4 years and kind of eased, you know, my feelings. But the other people saw this, and they're guys who I grew up with. I mean, they would tell me the same stories that happened to me happened to them. So there was the anger was it. So as I rose to the department, it was so important for me to make sure that we did a lot of training, a lot of diversity training, because officers who, you can't just call people names. You know? I mean, it's crazy, but the things that people did and said in front of people, it was beyond one's imagination. And so everybody was angry. And the 60s in particular, people was angry. And it did and continues to be a problem. If we travel across this country, you will see certain areas where these things are continuing to happen over and over again. But we have to do what we're doing to make sure that our officers know better. They have to know better, number one. Number two, we have to continue to train them and be selective of who you get on your police department. We get people on who, they know how to beat the system, but they're gonna make things worse for us, for everybody. You know, like, how do you stop it? Well, you continue to make sure that you don't get the wrong people in the department, number one. Number two, you make sure that you train them well, and you make sure that the supervisors are doing exactly what has to be done too, because officers get killed, people get killed because of idiots acting a fool, and that becomes the bottom line. Okay? Yes,
So, I understand completely what both of you are saying. However, on this end, in 2025, these things are still happening to us. And we're not trained to be able to handle those situations. It feels like the onus is on us to comply in a way that our white counterparts are not being asked to do. And as an attorney, it's confusing to be taught that you have rights if the rights mean nothing.
Right.
So when you are talking to young people who also suffer indignities every single day, we have bad days as well. I'm really torn about what to teach them because I feel like everybody needs to know what they're willing to die for, because otherwise, what are you living for?
let me tell you this.
Yes.
I was fortunate enough to talk with Nelson Mandela and Bishop Tutu both, and a lot of other people. And Nelson Mandela asked me, he said, young man, he said, why did you become a police officer? I said, Mr. Mandela, aren't you angry at the people in South Africa for imprisoning you for 27 years? He said, no, why did you become a police officer? I told him exactly what I told you today, because I was beaten up by this. And this is what Nelson Mandela said to me. He said, young man, when in South Africa they imprisoned me for 27 years, I wanted to kill all the white people because of what they did to me. He said, but I realized that I had to think with my head as well as with my heart, because the blacks in South Africa were like 9% of the population in comparison to, the whites were 9% in comparison to the blacks, but the whites had all the weapons.
Right.
He said, so we have to think with our head as well as with our heart. And that's what I continue to tell people. As Ray said earlier, you gotta think about this. And I understand what you're saying, but we don't want to die. Nobody wants to die. But we want to use good judgment that says, there might be an idiot out there, whether he's a police officer, whoever it might be, who acts a fool, and if we act a fool, then we're not gonna get anything out of this. So that's why I continue to talk and train and train and train. And certainly, the main population is not trained. But we can tell people, we want you to come home. And that is your son, your kids, whatever it might be, our kids. And so we want everybody to do this. Because we might have a person who does not think the way that we do. They don't care about taking somebody's life. We've seen this stuff with George Floyd and all that stuff. We have to understand that there's some crazy people out there. And when they have this awesome power, they have the power to take someone's life. We all must understand and tell our kids. I have two sons, and one's 46, the other's 40. And over and over, I said, listen, son, I want you to be around as long as I have. And that's what we try to tell them. Make sure that you come home. And that becomes the bottom line.
So-
I want to know, does anything happen if they follow the procedure of complying, going home, talk to the parents complain to the police station or chief? Does anything happen?
Yes, it does for the most part, especially these days now. Now, back in the day, maybe not, but I promise you, if you go into that station and you talk to the supervisors and you let them know exactly what happened, and hopefully you got names or a number on a police car or something to that effect, where they can identify just who that was, I promise you there's gonna be some repercussions and some consequences behind that bad behavior. Trust me.
And that's true. So if you need us to come and talk to people, we'll do that. We love doing this because we want to stop it.
Yes.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious what your opinions are on and I know there's different platforms for them, but a police oversight or a citizens advisory panel that would work to oversee some of the police that might not be up to snuff, or to be a barrier from some of the citizens that, what is your opinion of that kind of a commission?
I think we need it. Coleman Young, great Mayor Coleman Young, started Board of Police Commissioners in Detroit Police Department. And it still exists today. And I think it's needed for sure. We don't have a problem with oversight. They become trained and they know what to look for, those that are chosen or elected to be on those boards. And, sometimes you need another, perspective, other than just, policing police, you know? And so, I'm all for the citizens academies that we put on and the board of police commissioners that, oversee the agencies. I'm all for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think that more communities need them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'm from Dearborn.
Does Dearborn not have, board of police commissioners?
But see, you say you're from Dearborn now, you see, I'm old.
Yeah.
And back
Oh,
when
it's
black people, when they
still.
drove through Dearborn, but it's not as bad as it was.
No, I know
No,
that.
no.
Yes.
I was going to school at Henry Ford Community College back in the 60s and was stopped by police. You know, but that was then, this is now. And what we're trying to do to make a
No, it's
difference.
still now.
You wouldn't have had this conversation 50 years ago.
Oh, no, I wouldn't, no, they would have, yeah.
But I think to answer with our sister there is, even when you go and you talk with the officers and they're moved, I think it needs to be something legislated where they can't go from one police department to the other. Right, you're busted in Dearborn, so you come to Inkster and get to do the same thing, and then you get to go to Livonia and Westland. So what do you think about some sort of legislation or oversight where you can't be,
It's already out
Busted.
there, it's already out there in Michigan. You can't just now go from department to department, carrying a record from a previous department.
oh, so there's something new out there
All
now?
of those things it comes to fruition, and we know now, you know, there's things that take place when you're in your hiring process that will identify that you left an agency or you quit an agency under some charges or things like that, and you're trying to get to another agency.
Yeah,
We
we just,
Across state lines.
That's identified now. I don't know about across state lines, but definitely within our area for sure.
we just finished paying taxes for someone that was fired in Detroit that got us a multi-million-dollar lawsuit in the city of Inkster.
What I did, my specific orders as chief, and I'm sure Ray's doing the same thing, is we want to make sure that whoever we hire has not had a history of those kinds of things, because that you know, Mr. Feiger, you know, when he was practicing law, he loved that
Yes,
stuff.
Jeffrey Feiger, yes.
Oh, yeah. That's a reality,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
Yes.
you got a stupid, you know, and unfortunately, when you don't have a board, a civilian board that looks at this, they let things go.
Yeah.
But we have to be mindful of all these things right now. You know, back in those days, police officers never went to jail.
Yeah, right.
I mean, never went to jail.
Well, we saw the poor boys on January 6th. I mean,
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
we're not supposed to say that, but we did. Right, and they're all free and can do whatever now. So those are the imbalances that she's talking about.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely. But these are conversations now that we're having and doing things, when you have people that tries to make a difference, or trying and doing to make a difference, that's what we're trying to do. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna say, we can't hear everything.
Oh,
We're having trouble hearing.
I'm sorry, you see, I have this thing called a brain that's dying.
I do want to put a disclaimer out there. I do think Chief Shaheen, Dearborn
yeah.
is doing,
He's doing a good
he's
job.
improving
Oh,
some
yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
God, yeah.
I know, yeah.
Yes. One, two.
You wanna use the mic?
Yeah.
Please use the mics.
Two questions. Since we know.
I can't hear.
Flip it up.
No, it's not.
Here's a-
Turn it on, Chief.
Oh, no.
You got it?
It's got it's a little toggle switch in there.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, great. I have two quick questions. I know some of the cities have safety commissions. I know local, like Refuge, of course, they do. So is that some kind of meeting that the community can actually go sit in on the safety commissions meeting so we can see what's going on in the police department?
Well, as it relates to Detroit, they have a board of police commissioners meeting every week, I believe it is.
Every week.
And the public is open to the public,
Always open to
Every
any
week.
commissioner in the city.
every week.
Okay.
Don't every police department have those kinds of meetings?
Yeah.
That you can attend?
Community meetings and.
Any commission meeting is open to the public.
Sure.
And do people normally come to the
Oh, yeah,
community?
oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Just wanna make sure we can add that to our list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the other thing is that we have 2 high school branches of NAACP now. We have a Romulus High School branch and an Ecorse High School branch. And we have our Western Wayne County Youth Council. So we want to probably have you guys come out and speak to our captive youth audience so that they'll actually hear, because they like to pop off when they have somebody say one thing wrong to them. So they need to hear from you guys or someone in your position to say, don't do that.
Sure.
Instead of hearing it from their mothers or their fathers, because you know they don't want to listen to us anyway.
Right.
But if they hear from somebody who can give them some statistics or some facts about what would happen, that would be very important.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
And we'll charge you exactly what we're charging for tonight.
Okay.
I used to say when I was chief, I said, if you want to bribe me, make a coconut cake.
There you go. Or a German chocolate.
Thank you, guys.
Mine isn't so much a question, it's just a comment I wanted to make. In 1976, I joined the Army. I was a WAC, one of the last of the WACs. We were integrated into the Army, and so I was at the MP Corps, the MP school. 175 men, 20 women. The men were always served meals first. So when they had a standing in formation to be lectured that we were an embarrassment to this man's army, especially the military police corps. And it was their goal to make sure that we failed because we were women and we were no longer WACs, but that we would be carrying weapons and doing those things. So we really took it to heart. All 20 of us passed. Can't say that about the 175 guys. They did not want to make it through the. So I thank you for continuing when everything was no and those walls were there, that you kept on. So thank you so much.
And people don't really think about that in terms of those kinds of situations. The same thing happened on DPD. When the women, 1974, went into self-defense, they really caught the devil. And we caught it, but they really caught it. And the other part of that too was the wives of some of the men, the male officers didn't want them to work with women.
Oh, yeah.
It was a mess. But the thing now, 10 years before that, or 20 years before that, they didn't want them to work with people of color. But this is the United States of America.
Right.
And here's, look, I did a lineage tracing here. I did an op-ed piece a couple weeks ago about this, in which I took my family back over 200 years in the United States of America. And I said, my father was born in Alabama, my grandfather, my grandmother, my great-grandparents, and I took it back to where my name came from, the guy who owned my great-great-grandparents. People said, oh, you're angry? No, I don't know this guy. You know, I mean, that was a different time. If I'm going to hold anger on somebody I didn't know because the system was different then, now if somebody says something or something, I can get angry. But the reality is that happened. Now let's learn from this and really make this the United States of America. Let's make this truly the United States of America and things that we can do to be inclusive of everybody. You just said about the WACs, you know, my aunt was in the colored WACs in the 40s. Of course, the whole big thing, you know.
Connie's mother was
Yeah.
on the triple.
But that was that. I mean, look, the things that we said and heard in Vietnam, we're fighting a war in Vietnam and people were screaming racist comments in the middle of the war. But we got to protect each other's lives. And I swear to God, we're in a tent, and guys are saying 2, 4, 6, 8. We don't want to integrate in, go home. And we're in Vietnam. In Vietnam.
Right.
You know, this is crazy. You know, somebody, the VC come over the hill and start shooting. Yeah, I'm gonna go home, you know. But the reality is, these are crazy people. And how do you handle that? We become smarter. We become smarter. We make sure that those kinds of things don't continue to happen. And, you know, you just imagine with Ray and myself, these young officers come up to us, and young people in the street, they say, Chief or Sheriff or Dr. McKinnon or someone, thank you for the conversation that we've had. Because you've made a difference in my life. You know, and these are white and black kids. You know, and my wife, she said, hey, you know, she doesn't have to call me Chief. She's fine. Someone bless that for you. She said, you really touched a lot of young people's lives. I said, yes. Yes, I try to, because it's important for us to have those kind of conversations with everybody as much as possible and to touch their lives. And like I said before, my teacher, Mr. Raymond Hughes, 100 years old, and he's the person who touched my life when I was 12 and 13 years of age, and still there. And hopefully, some of the people that we've here today, you'll go back and say good things about not only us, but what we're trying to do. And this is what we try to do. That law enforcement code of ethics, remember that first paragraph. As a law enforcement officer, my fundamental duty is to serve the community. My fundamental duty to safeguard lives and property, protect the innocent against deception, weak against oppression or intimidation, and respect the constitutional rights of all to liberty, equality, and justice. And we live by that. And I used to go to the academy and say, if you guys want to go through life like and get your 25 years in like I did, and never have complaint, I never had a complaint. Never had a complaint. Never. Because I would treat everybody fairly. Now, I've gotten into fights with people, you know, and I beat some people up. But when it was all over, the guy said, man, you were fair. I said, yep, I was not fair. But you go to jail, you know. And honestly, the guys would cuss you out and everything. The guys cuss you out. That's not, what good does that do you? You cuss me out, you still go to jail. You know? But you didn't beat me up. No, what am I beat you up for? Because you cussed me out? No. I'm here to do my job as a law enforcement officer. And you laugh about, yes, sir.
Yeah, you talked about how important diversity is in your recruiting for people within the forces. Right now, diversity, equity, and inclusion is being attacked.
Yes.
And it is being taken, they're taking away funding from universities that continue to have diversity, equity, inclusion. And I imagine they'll do that for police departments too across the country. And also the requirement that is being made on a lot of the police departments across the country to work with ICE and to make sure that they help with ICE enforcement people moving in and getting people in schools and churches. And I wonder if you have some thoughts about what's happening nationally that is going to impact all of us, and especially you as police officers.
So from the diversity standpoint, it's important for me, that being a sheriff of Wayne County, that my force reflects the county that we serve. If you know anything about Wayne County is a very diverse county. You know, we have the largest Arab American community in the country in our area. I have to have officers that look like that. My undersheriff is an Arab American person, Mike Jacob, and who I grew up on the police department with for years and years. We have to be in a position where whether you're black, white, Arabic, Jewish, whatever you are, it's important that my agency reflect that, and we do. Proud to say that we do. So we're getting that right. Now, as it relates to the ICE situation, fortunately enough, and unfortunately as well, because people are incarcerated into our jails after they've been arraigned and sentenced to our jail, until they can make bond, or if they have a bond, or whatever that is. They're there under court order. They're there under court order. Everyone that's that I'm holding in our jail system is there because the judge said they have to be there under court order. That means that ICE cannot come into our jails to violate a judge's court order and just try to find out who's documented, who's not. We don't allow that. And we don't allow it because the law says we must hold those in our custody that are court ordered. So ICE can't come in with a detainer or some kind of document that says, not by a judge's document, but their own document that says they want to detain that person. You can't do it in Wayne County. So I'm happy for that. So we don't have an issue.
When I was teaching at the university, this young woman, she came to my office door and she said, Dr. McKinnon, she says, can I speak with you? I said, sure. So she walked in and she closed the door and she said, Dr. McKinnon, she says, I need to talk with you about something that's very important to me. I said, well, okay. She said, I'm illegal. She said, my family's illegal. We live in Southwest Detroit. And my dad came here from Mexico X number of years ago. She said, I'm 21 years of age, and every day I'm afraid that someone's gonna come and take us away. And she's in tears. I looked at this young lady and I said, boy, oh boy. Now here I am, I'm sitting in this office and I'm happy with my life. And whatever my problems are, nothing compares to what she has. Because at any moment she could be sent back to Mexico. She had two young siblings who were also illegal. She said, and I said to her, I said, don't you realize who I am? She said, I know that you were the police chief and everything, and you are bound to have to do certain things. She said, but we need help. She says, my dad drives to work every day with 3 other Mexican guys who are illegal also. But one has a driver's license. And so if they get stopped by the police, he'll be okay, but the rest. And she said, but I need help. Well, I called a friend of mine who's a politician, and they helped them. So she's legal now. But the reality is, how many other people are like that who could have somebody help? I did a presentation down in Texas, and I told them that story, and they said, well, you know, we don't want most of the illegals down here because, you know, we have too many of them. And so it started some conversation that was not good. I was kind of surprised with the number of people in Texas who did not want people with them, you know. It's just interesting, the conversation. I tell you that story because it's happened to a number of professors and probably law enforcement people right now who get that same kind of conversation with people. You know, they want to stay in the country. They want to stay. And I mean, I don't have the answer for it, but what we're into right now is a very difficult time. You know, and the more that they send people away, the more people are going to try to come back. You know, you can never exactly close 100% a border. It's like stopping people from escaping from prison. You can't stop them all. But I don't have the answer for that big problem and concern. But there has to be something better to do than what we're doing right now.
Absolutely.
You know, so.
Absolutely.
Is that it?
Are there any other questions? Well, let's get.
I just wanted to, I was curious about how you were the lead investigator with the Nancy Kerrigan.
We were talking about that today.
And I just thought that was wonderful because it probably was a lot of work to get.
Well, those of you know the Nancy Kerrigan story?
Yes.
There's young people over there, you guys. Google it. Nancy Kerrigan was the #1 skater in the world, figure skater in the world. And I've been chief for a week.
Your baptism by fire, huh?
Oh, my Lord. And so we had our first Board of Police Commissioners meeting. And we're sitting there, and Dave Simmons, my chief of staff, he came running in. Chief, we gotta talk. I said, what? Well, we gotta talk. I said, so I went over to the side. He said, you know Nancy Kerrigan? I said, yes. Now, this is honest to God true. He said, yeah, she's a world famous skater. He said, not anymore. I said, Dave, what? He said, yeah, man. She was just hit over the head with a pipe in the homo. I said, oh my Lord. So that's a Lord, why me, Lord? And so we ran over. We jumped in the car and drove over. It was snowing that day. It was crazy. And I went into Cobo, and there's a security officer there. And I said, do you know what Nancy Kerrigan is? He said, who? I said, Nancy Kerrigan, man. So he said, oh, you mean that woman who got hit? I said, yeah. He said, she's in the hospital. I'm telling you this whole story because, to me, it started everything for us in terms of anyway. So he said she's at Hustle Hospital. I said, no, they deliver babies at Hustle. Both of my sons were born in Hustle. He said, so I called. The chief was calling the radio. I said, radio, this is code 2000. Do you have a location for Miss Kerrigan? He said, I think she's at the hospital. I said, no, she's not at the hospital. I said, do you know where, can you find out where she was staying? He said, they're at the Westin. So me, my driver, and so forth, we sped over to the Westin, and there's a guy named Larry Alexander who used to be the CEO of the Westin. He's standing in the lobby. I said, Larry. I said, listen, I gotta find Nancy Kerrigan. He said, well, there's her father right there. I said, oh, Mr. Kerrigan. He was standing there. I said, sir, this is who I am. I said, where's your daughter? He said, well, she's up in the swimming pool. I said, what happened to her? He said, well, she came off the ice, the guy hit her in the leg with a pipe. Wow. And so he said, she's swimming, trying to work the pain out. I said, is there anybody with her? He said, no. I said, wait a minute. So you got a person who was attacked with a pipe. They're in the swimming pool right now. He said, yeah, everything's okay. So now think about this. Me, my Smo, this was my guy. Another guy named Larry, we're all running up the escalator. but people didn't know me at the time because I'm the new chief, you know. So we get up into the area where the swimming pool, there's no Nancy Kerrigan. So I'm going, oh Lord, God, Lord, come on, Lord. Who was it? Was it Fred Sanford? Elizabeth, that's what this is. So I ran into the dressing room, the shower room, and all the women were, Nancy Kerrigan. I can tell this story now. It's been 30 years, you know. Anyway, so there's no Nancy Kerrigan in the room. So I said, they probably killed her. They probably threw her in the river. This is true. So I said to Dave Simmons, I said, Dave, man, this is it for us. I said, I'm going to lose the job after a week here. And so we looked in the river. We didn't see anybody in the river. So I went back and I said, Mr. Kerrigan, I said, what's your room number? He said, 6912. Let's go. So he said, let's run. No, let's take the elevator up there. This is really the truth. So we took the elevator up there, and there's Nancy Kerrigan sitting with her leg on this table, and there's a guy who turns out he's her husband now, but he was her doctor at the time. He's working on her leg, and so I says, Miss Kerrigan, my name's McKinnon, I'm police chief here in Detroit. I said, what happened? So she told me the story. So here's the story. She said that she was coming off the ice, and this big guy, Shane Stant, hit her across the leg, and she was crying and everything, and he ran out. So the whole point was to disable her so that she couldn't beat Tanya Harding. Anyway, so down here, I think about what I'm gonna tell you now, okay? So I said, Miss Kerrigan, could you describe the guy who hit you? I swear to you, I swear to you, I swear to you. Does anybody remember what he looked like?
Yeah.
Tell me what he looked like.
Big guy, brown face,
Go, keep going.
short hair,
Short hair.
kind of brownish hair,
Keep going.
white guy.
White guy.
Dark hair.
I said, what does he look like? And Nancy Kerrigan, she said, he looks like you. Is it the truth? It's the truth. I said, he's a black guy? No, he's a white guy. This is the truth. The truth. I said, wait a minute. She had just got hit. I said, is he? No, he's white, but he looks like you.
That is funny. She doesn't see color.
I said to myself, I said, if this case goes to court, you're gonna lose. I said, because a good attorney's gonna say, you mean to tell me this guy was black? No, but he looked like you. And so I said, I gotta stay out of the courtroom. And so, there he is. So that evening, we started getting all these calls. And so by that time I told Dennis Arch, I said, Mr. Mayor, I said, this is what happened. He goes, oh my God. He said, we can both be fired. I said, well, if you don't fire me, So they're calling, and so they want to do live in Detroit.
Wow.
And so the Today Show was the first one. What's her name?
Brian Gum.
No, the female.
That was back in the day.
Jane Pauley. Joan Pauley.
That's-
Jane Pauley. So they called it. I said tomorrow morning. They said, well, tomorrow morning we'll go live for the Today Show at 7:00. I said, okay. So this is gonna be my big test. And I'm trying not to be nervous. All right. So anyway, so I'm standing in police headquarters, and so then Jane Pauley comes on at about 5 minutes to 7. She says, now, Chief, listen, she said, what can you tell me about this? I said, Miss Pauley, listen, there's very little I can say about this because the investigation's ongoing, don't worry about that, Chief McKinnon. She said, I'm just gonna, whatever you can tell me. Now remember, this is a seasoned reporter, and they say that so they lie to you to get you on TV. Anyway, so here I'm standing in police headquarters, live from Detroit, police headquarters, Chief Isaiah McKinnon, to tell us all about the Nancy Kerrigan assault, And I'm going, oh my God, some of my friends who across the country who saw this, they said, we could see the look on your face, like you're saying, oh my God, what did I get into? And so she comes on, Jane Pauley. So Chief, now, tell us this whole story of what happened with Nancy Kerrigan. And I guess I must have looked like, oh, for God's sake. Anyway, I said, well, Jane, I said, let me explain to you. There's very little that we know. There's assault that occurred on Miss Kerrigan last night. Is she alive? I said, yes, she's alive. But this is what they're going. And she goes on and on with this stuff. And I think I was on TV for 5 minutes, answering questions that I couldn't answer. So that morning, a phone call comes into my office, and Benny Napoleon took the call. And this guy said, I know the story behind who did it. And Benny said, oh yeah? Who was it? It was Shane Stant and her husband, Tanya Harding's husband, Tanya Harding. Don't tell your guy.
Don't tell Tanya Harding.
Yeah, Tanya Harding. And he said he was part of it because they wanted to stop her from Nancy Kerrigan from being first. And so, because I couldn't say this at the time, And so I get a call from the prosecutor, John O'Hara. He says, what's going on? I said, here's what I just found out. And they are in Clackamas County, Oregon. And I said, John, you should probably send the prosecutor up there. And so John O'Hara sent the prosecutor, we sent state police, and I sent somebody out there too. And we cracked the case. That was it. So, you know. But it turned everything around for us. Because remember, at that time, we had, Chief Harden was still in jail. With all the other stuff, and
Oh, yeah, I forgot about
we could not talk to the media.
that. Right.
And we solved that case, and it, you know. So yes, we did.
I was impressed with it.
But that was a scary time.
Yeah.
And one more story I gotta tell you. Okay, so listen. Now you got me going. So listen. Remember when the 10 guys escaped from prison? I don't know if you remember that. What was the prison?
Ryan?
Ryan Correctional Facility. Yeah.
Seven, Ryan.
Yes.
Seven, yeah.
They 10 guys escaped, and so my family and I were down in North Carolina on vacation. So I get this call from Dave Simmons, my guy. He said, Chief, he said, you're on vacation? I said, yeah, Dave, you don't on vacation. He said, well, you gotta come back home. I said, what do you mean you gotta come back home? He said, 10 people escaped from the Ryan Correctional Facility, and they're all out. I said, wait a minute, Dave. I said, I just got here yesterday. He said, they just escaped this morning. I said, does the mayor know? Nope. He said, you should call him. I said, why should I call him, Dave? You insured, you should know. I said, okay, I'll call. So I called the mayor. He said, you gotta come home. So my wife.
That's scarier than the 10.
We just got there. I mean, we were supposed to be there for 2 weeks. Oh yeah. Anyway, we had this big house on the ocean. Anyway, so Ben called me and he said, listen, he said, we got 1 in already, so we got 9 now. And so I said, here's what we're gonna do, guys. Every day that they're out, we're gonna have a press conference. 1 at noon and 1 at 6 p.m. to let people know who's still out. And we have their picture there, and we're gonna offer a reward for them. There you go. And so, every day, somebody was locked up after the press conference.
Yeah.
Because what they didn't know is that people were waiting for exactly to go up. And so the last person, we had gotten to 9. We had 1 person who was out. I'll never forget this, guys. So I did a press conference on the last day, and I'm sorry, I'm laughing because this is really the way it happened. Press conference, and this last guy, he was really a nice guy, but he was this crook. You know, he was a nice guy. Crooks are nice. Anyway, so we locked him up after my press conference, and so Denny Anderson, he said, Chief, he said, this guy wants to meet you. I said, wait a minute, who? He said, the last guy, the 10th guy, he wants to meet you. I said, what is it? He said, this guy thinks you're the greatest guy, you know? I said, well, okay, so they brought him to my office in shackles, you know, and he comes, he said, Chief, he's man, you know, I'm gonna tell you something. I really wanted to meet you. I said, you wanted to meet me? Yes, sir, I'm gonna tell you, so let me tell you. He said, I watch you every day on TV. He said, you got a nice smile and everything. He said, and man, he said, I really think you did a great job. I said, well, thank you. He said, but listen. I said, well, how'd they get you? He said, well, I was at my friend's house, and there was about 10 people in the house. We're all sitting around drinking. And so when that last press conference you had, and you said it was $10,000, he said, people started leaving. They started leaving the house. And he said, I knew I was going to get caught. And so he said that I walked out of the house and I'm walking down the street and I see 3 police cars driving. And he said, I stopped and put my arms out just like that and they drove past me. And so he said, oh. So he said, I ran back to the house and the police were in the house waiting on me. he said, man, he said, I knew I was going to get caught then because these guys went $10,000. You know, he said, so I just want to let you know, when I go back to Jackson Prison, I'm going to tell them, man, that Ike McKinnon's a nice guy. Now, that's a true story. Oh, God. Anyway, thank you all.
Very fabulous, thank you.
Yes, exceeded my expectations, and I had you up there.
We're going on the road with this show.
Sell tickets and make some money. Then you can go live in Hawaii.
That's right, the Red Night Show.
There you go. I love it, I love it.
Just a few more things before we're ready to go. I just wanted to thank you all again for being here, and I would like to acknowledge some very important people. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge Pastor Velma Overton and the senior pastor of this church, Pastor Mac Hall. They are always open, they always open the door for the community. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what a church is supposed to do.
Absolutely.
And so whenever we call and ask for one of their facilities, the answer is always yes. So thank you so much. We appreciate you. Of course, we want to thank our guest speakers.
Thank you so much.
But I do want to make sure that we carry the message out of here.
Yes.
We can do a lot. You don't have to march if you don't have the strength. You don't have to do a whole lot of things. Simple things like calling Congress. Do you know that when this started, and I was with them when it started, only 1,500 people a day were calling. Now you can't get through because 15,000 or more are calling.
Yes.
And the phones won't handle it.
Yes.
And the people are calling in protest for what's going on. So we have to make sure that we find a way to do the things that we know we can do to protect this country and our democracy. I was listening to you ask about the kids and how we have in this room the NAACP. They have a legal defense fund, and they will come to your rescue when there is an issue that they know has violated your rights.
That's right.
That's a community organization that is right here. They need to know, our young people need to know you have somewhere to go with your protest. If the police department doesn't hear it, you leave them alone, you turn it over to the experts. They'll take care of it. You have the League of Women Voters here. We're nonpartisan, but I'm on the advocacy committee for the State League Board. I'm on the board of directors of the state and Dearborn Heights. In our advocacy meetings, you should see the list of bills that we either support or don't support. Our voice gets heard in Michigan. So one of the things you can do is join the NAACP, join the League of Women Voters, because the more of us that are together, united, as we started talking about today at the very beginning of this program, it's all about unification. We can set things right. It's not as hard as we're thinking, because the people have the power.
Absolutely.
Trust me, the people have the power. I also want to thank Gina Stewart and Jen Oliver for being here. And let's see, what is this? Oh, I wanted to tell you, Chief Jenkins was supposed to be here. She's sick. So last night, I was in one meeting, left that meeting, got on another meeting, and it was the NAACP PAC meeting. And in that meeting, Raphael Washington was on. And then he said he would come tonight to take over. I'm like, wow. So I called him my God said. Larry said, that's so fortuitous. I said, no, he's just a God said. So I want to thank him especially for coming out at the last minute. And all of you who are here, I know it's very cold, it's icy, it's dark, it's damp, but you are really soldiers, and I know that you will carry these messages forward to all those people that you know and love, because we got to do this together. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can we get a picture right quick with one person from each organization, and you guys, and Pastor Matt?
I'll take the picture.
No, you in the picture, them two before they go. Pass it over.